She locked herself in the bathroom at midnight, phone in hand, ready to call 911. But when her husband's voice came through the door, calm, threatening, reminding her he was a lawyer and the police would believe him, she hung up. That's the moment Claire Vaughn realized the man she married wasn't just controlling, he was dangerous. And when she discovered she was pregnant, she knew she had to escape, or her child would grow up in the same prison she was living in. What happens next will shock you. But before we dive in, hit that like button if you believe every woman deserves to be heard. Drop a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe because this channel stands with survivors. Let's begin. The security camera footage would later show everything in grainy black and white. Timestamp 11:43 p.m. A woman, 8 weeks pregnant, backing into a bathroom. Her hands shaking as she turns the lock. A shadow appears under the door. You have 10 seconds before I break this door down. Claire, my name is Claire Vaughn. I used to hunt predators for a living. Corporate fraud, political corruption, dirty CEOs hiding behind expensive suits and fake smiles. I exposed them in print. I never imagined I would marry one. And by the time I figured it out, I was pregnant with his child, trapped in a penthouse prison 30 floors above Chicago, running out of time and options. That night, pressed against the cold marble of our bathroom wall, I dialed 911 with trembling fingers. The operator answered. 911, what is your emergency? I opened my mouth. Preston's voice came through the door, softer now, more dangerous. Claire, honey, don't do anything stupid. You know what happens when police come? I'm a lawyer. They'll believe me. And after they leave, we're going to have a very long conversation about trust. I hung up. The operator called back twice. I let it ring. This is what they don't tell you about abuse. It is not always the dramatic scenes you see in movies. It is the systematic destruction of your options until you are standing in your own bathroom at midnight, too terrified to call for help because you know he is right. He would talk his way out of it. He always did. I unlocked the door. Preston stood there in his tailored pajamas, looking every inch the concerned husband. His face was calm. That was worse than the anger. When Preston went calm, someone paid the price. There's my girl, he said, stepping inside. See, we can be reasonable. Now, let's talk about why you felt the need to lock me out of my own bathroom. I just needed a minute, I whispered. A minute. He closed the door behind him. We were in a 1,400 square foot penthouse with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan. But in that moment, the bathroom was the entire world. You needed a minute from your husband, the man who gave you this life, this home, everything you have. His hand came up. I flinched. He noticed and smiled. I'm not going to hit you, Claire. I'm just disappointed. After everything I have done for you, you still don't trust me. That was Preston's gift. He could make you feel guilty for your own fear. 2 years ago, I was a rising investigative journalist at the Chicago Tribune. I had broken stories that brought down 3 state legislators and exposed a fraudulent medical device company. I was good at finding the truth people wanted to hide. Then I met Preston Caldwell at a charity fundraiser, Harvard Law, partner at Morrison & Blythe, one of the top 5 law firms nationally. He was charming, successful, and he paid attention to me in a way that made me feel seen. 6 months later, we were married. 3 months after that, I stopped working. He said I did not need to anymore, that he wanted to take care of me, that my little $50,000 salary covering city council meetings was cute, but unnecessary. By the first anniversary, I had no job, no friends he had not approved, and no access to money he did not control. But I did not see it as control. He called it love. Standing in that bathroom, my hand instinctively went to my stomach. I was 8 weeks pregnant. Preston did not know yet. I had hidden the test, terrified of how he would react. Go to bed, Claire, he said finally. And next time you want to lock a door in our home, remember that I own every lock and every key. He left. I stayed into the bathroom for another hour, sitting on the cold tile floor, wondering how I had become this person, this frightened ghost in a gilded cage. I did not know it then, but that night was the beginning of the end. Not because I was ready to leave, but because sometimes when you are drowning, you only have 2 choices: keep sinking or start fighting. I was about to start fighting. Downtown Chicago looked beautiful from 30 floors up. Our building was limestone and glass, the kind of place where doormen wore white gloves and the lobby had fresh orchids delivered every Monday. Preston loved telling people we lived here. He loved the image it projected. From the outside, we were perfect. Preston Caldwell and his beautiful wife Claire, the lawyer and his artist bride, that is what the society pages call me, his artist bride. I had not touched a paintbrush in 18 months. The morning after the bathroom incident, Preston acted as if nothing had happened. He made coffee, asked about my day, kissed my forehead before leaving for work. This was his pattern, explosion followed by normalcy. It kept me off balance, always questioning whether the night before had really been that bad. I spent the morning like I spent most mornings, wandering the penthouse, straightening things that did not need straightening, avoiding my own reflection. The apartment was decorated in shades of white and gray, sterile, beautiful, lifeless, like me. My phone buzzed, a text from Natalie Cross, my best friend from college. We had not spoken in 4 months. "Hey stranger, miss you. Coffee this week." I started typing a response, then deleted it. Preston monitored my phone so much. He said it was because he worried about me, that I was too trusting, that people would take advantage of me. What he meant was that he needed to control every conversation, every connection, every moment I existed outside his view. I did not answer Natalie. Instead, I went to the guest bathroom and took out the pregnancy test I had hidden behind the tampon box 3 days ago. 2 pink lines, still there, still real, still terrifying. I had known for 72 hours and had not told my husband I was pregnant. That should have told him everything about my marriage. The memory came back sharp and cruel. 6 months ago, before I fully understood what Preston was, I had mentioned wanting children someday. We were at dinner, a rare moment when he seemed relaxed. "You would make a terrible mother," he had said, cutting his steak with surgical precision. "Too scattered, too emotional. Besides, a baby would ruin your figure. And I did not marry you to watch you turn into someone's frumpy mom." I had laughed it off, made a joke about it, but his face had been serious, dead serious. Now I was pregnant, and I could not tell him. The front door opened. Preston was home early. My heart jumped into my throat. "Claire, where are you? In bedroom?" I called, shoving the test back into its hiding spot. He appeared in the doorway. His tie was loosened, his jaw tight. I knew that look. Bad day at work. He needed a target. "Did you buy groceries today?" he asked. "Yes, everything on the list." "Really, because I do not see the specific brand of sparkling water I asked for." My stomach dropped. I had forgotten. One item on a 20-item list. "They were out. I got a different brand." "They were out," he repeated. "So you made an executive decision without consulting me about my water in my home that I pay for." "Preston, I am sorry. I will go back." "You will go back. Now it is 6 p.m. I have been working all day. I come home exhausted, and you cannot even get the shopping right." The thing about Preston was that he never yelled. Yelling would be too obvious, too easy to identify as abuse. Instead, he used his lawyer voice, calm, reasonable, making you feel like you were the crazy one for being more upset. "You are right," I said, because agreeing was always easier than fighting. "I should have called you. I am sorry." He studied me for a long moment. Then he smiled. That smile that used to make me feel special now made my skin crawl. "I know you are sorry, baby. You just need to be more thoughtful. I work hard to give us this life. The least you can do is follow simple instructions." He kissed my forehead and walked away. I sat on the edge of our bed, a piece of furniture that cost more than my first car, in an apartment that felt like a mausoleum, married to a man I was terrified of, and I realized something that would change everything. I could not bring a baby into this. I could not raise a child in a home where forgetting the sparkling water was a crime, where love was conditional on perfect obedience, where the person who was supposed to protect us was the person we needed protection from. For 2 years, I had been telling myself it would get better, that Preston was just stressed, that I needed to try harder. But you cannot try your way out of someone else's cruelty. That night, after Preston fell asleep, I went to the building's lobby and used the public computer in the business center. I searched for domestic violence resources, shelters, escape plans, how to leave when you have no money and nowhere to go. Every article said the same thing: make a plan, gather documents, save money, have a safe place to go. I had none of those things, but I was going to get them. Because sometimes you do not leave because you are strong. You leave because staying will kill you. And I was not ready to die. The prenatal vitamins arrived in plain packaging 3 days later. I had ordered them online using a library computer, shipped to a pickup location 6 blocks away. Preston did not know I left the building during his work hours. He thought I stayed inside like a good girl. I was learning to hide things, small rebellions, tiny acts of disobedience that felt like revolution. For 2 weeks, I took the vitamins in secret. I researched pregnancy, shelters, and divorce law. I started hiding $20 bills from grocery money, a secret stash in a tampon box Preston would never touch. I copied my birth certificate, social security card, and marriage license, storing them in a zippered pocket of a winter coat I knew he would not look in until November. I was building an escape plan one stolen moment at a time. Then Preston lost the Mackenzie account. I did not know what the Mackenzie account was, only that it was important. He came home at 7 p.m. on a Thursday, his face a storm cloud. I was heating soup for dinner. Nothing elaborate. I had been too nauseous all day. He walked straight to the kitchen, saw the pot on the stove, and his expression darkened further. Soup, that is what we are having for dinner. I was not feeling well. I thought something light. You thought, he pulled open the refrigerator. There is $100 worth of food in here, and you are serving me soup. Preston, I can make something else. He slammed the refrigerator door so hard the whole unit shook. I jumped. Do you have any idea what kind of day I have had? The firm just lost a $7 million client because someone could not keep their mouth shut. My entire division is under review. My partnership status is being questioned. And I come home to my wife, who does nothing all day, and she cannot even prepare a decent meal. My hands were shaking. The nausea was worse. I pressed one hand to my stomach without thinking. Preston's eyes followed the movement, locked on it. His face changed. What was that? What, that? He pointed at my hand on my belly. You have been doing that a lot lately. Touching your stomach, looking sick. His eyes narrowed. Are you pregnant? The world stopped spinning. This was not how I wanted him to find out. I was not ready. I did not have enough money saved. I had nowhere to go, but lying would be worse. Yes, I whispered. The silence that followed was worse than any yelling could have been. Preston just stared at me, his expression completely blank. Then he laughed. One short, barking sound with no humor in it. Of course you are. Perfect timing. Right when my career is imploding, you decide to saddle us with a baby. I did not decide anything. These things happen. Get rid of it. The words hit like a slap. What? You heard me. Get rid of it. Make it an appointment. Handle it. I am not ready for this. We are not ready for this. Preston, I want to keep... He moved so fast I did not see it coming. His hands shot out and grabbed my jaw, fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. He pulled me close, his face inches from mine. Let me make this crystal clear, he said, his voice deadly quiet. You will terminate this pregnancy, or I will make your life a living hell. And trust me, Claire, you have not seen hell yet. You think this is bad. This is me being nice. Cross me on this, and you will learn what bad really looks like. He released me with a shove. I stumbled back against the counter. You have until Monday to schedule the appointment. And Claire, he looked back at me from the doorway. If you tell anyone about this conversation, if you try to leave, if you do anything except what I just told you, I will destroy you. Legally, financially, socially. I will make sure you end up with nothing. Do we understand each other? I nodded because I could not speak. He left the room. A minute later, I heard his study door close. I stood in that kitchen, hand on my jaw where I could already feel the bruise forming, and something inside me broke. Not broke in the way that shatters, broke in the way that cracks open. letting light in. This man wanted me to kill my baby. Not for medical reasons, not for financial reasons, for control. Because a child would be one more thing in my life he could not completely dominate. And in that moment, I made my decision. I was done being afraid. I was done being obedient. I was done pretending this was love. I pulled out my phone and opened the browser, found the website for a domestic violence hotline. But I could not call from here. Preston monitored everything. So I waited. At 2 a.m., when I knew he was deeply asleep, I crept out of bed, got dressed in the dark, took my hidden cash and documents, left a note on the counter that said, "I went for a walk." Then I walked out of the penthouse with no real plan except this. I was not going back. Not ever. The streets of Chicago at 2 a.m. were cold and dark. I had nowhere to go. No money except $340 in key. No family. My parents had died 4 years ago. No friends Preston had not systematically eliminated from my life. But I was free. For the first time in 2 years, I was free. I walked until I found an all-night diner. Ordered coffee I would not drink and sat in a booth, trying to figure out what came next. That is when I remembered the card. 3 weeks earlier, before the pregnancy test, before the breaking point, Preston had announced we were hosting the firm's holiday party. His exact words were, "The senior partners will be there, This is important for my career. You will be the perfect hostess." It was not a request. I spent 2 days preparing. Preston chose my dress, a midnight blue gown that cost more than most people's monthly rent. He chose my jewelry, my shoes, my hairstyle. I was a doll he was dressing for display. The night of the party, 150 people filled our penthouse, lawyers and their spouses, all performing the same dance of fake smiles and careful conversation. I played my part perfectly, smiled at the right moments, laughed at unfunny jokes, made sure every glass stayed full. By 9 p.m., my face hurt from smiling. My feet hurt from the heels. My soul hurt from pretending to be happy. I slipped away to the private balcony off the master bedroom. It was November, cold enough that no one else would be out there. I needed 5 minutes where I did not have to perform. I leaned against the railing, looking out at the Chicago skyline, and for the first time all night, I let my mask drop. Tears came before I could stop them. A view like this is wasted on tears. I spun around, startled. A man stood in the shadows near the door, tall, late 50s, with gray threaded dark hair and eyes that seemed to see too much. "I am sorry, Baso," I stammered, wiping my face quickly. "I did not realize anyone was out here. I will leave you in peace. Please do not." He stepped into the light spilling from inside. Peace is the last thing one finds at these events. I was escaping the noise myself. He moved to the railing, keeping a respectful distance. Up close, I recognized him. Grayson Reed, the tech billionaire. His company had revolutionized supply chain logistics. He was worth billions and notoriously private. "I am Claire," I said, because it seemed rude not to introduce myself. "I know. You are Preston Caldwell's wife." Something in his tone made it sound less like a statement and more like a condolence. We stood in silence for a moment. I could feel him studying me, taking in the too bright smile I had worn all night, the way I kept my arms wrapped around myself, the faint shadow of a bruise on my wrist that makeup had not quite covered. "Forgive me," he said finally, "but you seem to be in some distress. Is there anything I can do to help?" The offer of kindness from a stranger was so unexpected it almost broke me again. I wanted to tell him everything. The fear, the control, the way Preston made me feel like I was slowly disappearing. But fear was a deeply ingrained habit. "No, thank you, Mr. Reed. I am just feeling a little overwhelmed by the party." He looked at me for a long moment. "I had a sister once, Emma. She had that same look you have right now, like she was drowning in plain sight." Something in his voice made me look up. Past tense. Had. What happened to her? She married young, charming man, successful. Everyone thought they were perfect together. He paused, his expression distant. He killed her when she tried to leave, beat her so badly the paramedics said she never had a chance. My breath caught. "I am so sorry." I was 23 when it happened. Too young, too powerless to help her. She tried to tell me things were bad, But I did not listen. I thought she was exaggerating, that she was being dramatic. His hands gripped the railing. I have spent 30 years wishing I had listened. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a simple business card. This is my private number. If you should ever find yourself needing help, the kind of help that requires resources and absolute discretion, call me anytime, day or night. I stared at the card. Taking it felt dangerous. Like crossing a line I could not uncross. But not taking it felt like closing the only door that had opened in my prison in years. My fingers trembled as I took it. Thank you. Claire, where are you? Preston's voice from inside. Sharp. Looking for me. I shoved the card into my clutch as Preston appeared in the doorway. His eyes went immediately to Grayson, and then back to me. There you are. I have been looking everywhere. He crossed to me, put his arm around my waist. To anyone watching, it looked protective, but his fingers dug in hard enough to hurt. Mr. Reed, Preston said, his tone unctuous. An honor to have you here. I hope my wife has not been boring you with small talk. On the contrary, she is excellent company. Grayson's eyes met mine over Preston's shoulder. You have a remarkable wife, Mr. Caldwell. I hope you know how fortunate you are. Oh, I do, Preston said, pulling me closer. I remind her every day. We went back inside. Preston kept his hand on my back the rest of the night, a constant reminder of his presence. But in my clutch, my fingers kept finding that card, a lifeline, a possibility, a way out. I did not call that night, or the next week, or the next, because leaving is not one decision. It is 1,000 small decisions, each one terrifying in its own way. But I kept the card, hidden in a jewelry box Preston never opened, tucked inside a necklace case. And 3 weeks later, sitting in that all-night diner at 2:30 in the morning, I finally understood what Grayson had been offering. Not just help, hope. I pulled out my phone and dialed the number. Grayson Reed answered on the second ring, his voice alert despite the hour. This is Reed. Mr. Reed, this is Claire. From the party. You said if I needed help. Are you in immediate danger? He is at home, asleep, but I left. I cannot go back. Where are you? I told him the diner's address. Stay there. Order food. Stay visible. Stay around people. I am sending a car. 20 minutes. The driver's name is Thomas. Black SUV. Do not get in any other vehicle. Okay. Claire, you did the right thing calling me. The line went dead. I ordered eggs I could not eat and coffee I did not drink. Watch the clock. 19 minutes later, a black SUV pulled up outside. The driver, a man in his 60s with kind eyes, came inside. Miss Vaughn, I nodded. I am Thomas. Mr. Reed sent me. Are you ready? I followed him to the SUV, half expecting Preston to appear from the shadows. But we pulled away into the night, and I realized I had actually done it. I had left. Thomas drove to a townhouse in Lincoln Park. Not a mansion or a hotel, a discreet, elegant home with security cameras and reinforced doors. Grayson was waiting inside with 3 other people. Claire, this is Diane Mercer, an attorney who specializes in family law. This is Marcus Webb, a detective with Chicago PD. And this is Rachel Foster, a victim's advocate. They sat me down, gave me tea, let me cry. Then they started asking questions. Diane spoke first. Tell me about your marriage. Start from the beginning. So I did. For 2 hours, I told them everything. The isolation, the monitoring, the verbal abuse, the threats, the way Preston controlled money, friends, even my thoughts, the pregnancy and his demand that I terminate it. Marcus took notes. Did he ever hit you? Once, tonight, he grabbed my jaw, and he shoved me a few times. But mostly it was not physical. It was psychological. That is still abuse, Rachel said gently. And what he did tonight is assault. Diane leaned forward. Here's our situation. You can file for divorce. You can get a restraining order. But Preston is a lawyer with resources. This will be a fight. You need to be prepared for that. I am prepared, I said, and meant it. We made a plan. Diane would file paperwork in the morning. Marcus would take my statement and photograph the bruise on my jaw. Rachel would help me access emergency funds and temporary housing. For the first time in years, I felt like I had allies. Grayson had been quiet through most of it. Now he spoke. Claire, you will stay here tonight, tomorrow. We will move you to a secure apartment I own. You will have protection, and you will have whatever you need to rebuild your life. Why are you doing this? I asked. You do not know me. Because Emma would want me to, and because no one should have to face this alone. I stayed at the townhouse that night, slept for the first time in months without fear. The next morning, Diane filed divorce papers. Marcus filed a police report. I met with Rachel to discuss shelter options. By noon, I felt almost safe, almost free. Then Natalie called. Claire, oh my God, where are you? Preston is at my apartment. He says you left and he is worried you might hurt yourself. He is saying you are mentally unstable, that you are not thinking clearly because of the pregnancy. He has police with him. They want to know if I have seen you. My blood turned to ice. What did you tell them? That I had not heard from you in months, which is true. But Claire, what is going on? I cannot explain right now. Just please do not tell him anything if he calls again. He scares me, Claire. The way he was talking, like you were some fragile thing that might break. It did not sound like love. It sounded like ownership. That is because it is. I have to go. I hung up and told Grayson. His face darkened. He is smart. He is getting ahead of the narrative, painting you as unstable before you can tell your side. Diane nodded. This is common. Abusers often claim their victims are mentally ill to discredit them. We need to move fast. But we were not fast enough. That evening, I went with Rachel to get some clothes from a donation center. Just a 30-minute trip. I left my phone at the townhouse for security. When we came back, Grayson was standing outside with Marcus. Their expressions told me everything. He posted your picture on social media. Grayson said, a missing person post. Says you are 8 weeks pregnant and not in a good mental state. He is asking for the public's help finding you. My stomach dropped. How many people have seen it? 3,000 shares in 2 hours. Claire, he has connections, media contacts. This is going to be everywhere by morning. And it was. By the next day, my face was on the news. Local attorney's pregnant wife missing. Family fears for her safety. Preston gave an interview, his voice breaking at all the right moments. I just want her home safe. She has not been herself lately. I am worried about her and our baby. The comments online were brutal. Some people supported me. Most did not. She probably ran off with another man. Gold digger trying to take him for everything. If she was really being abused, why did not she leave sooner? That last one hurt the most. Because they did not understand. Leaving is the most dangerous time. And I was learning that even after you leave, the abuse does not stop. It just changes forms. Preston was not done destroying me. He was just getting started. And the worst part, I had no idea how much worse it could get. The first catastrophe came 3 days after Preston's social media campaign. I woke up at dawn with cramping, sharp, stabbing pains in my lower abdomen. When I went to the bathroom, I saw blood. Something is wrong, I told Rachel, my voice shaking. The baby. Something is wrong with the baby. She rushed me to the hospital. Grayson met us there with Diane. The ER doctor did an ultrasound. I watched the screen, holding my breath. The fetus is still viable, she said finally, but you are experiencing a threatened miscarriage. You need complete bed rest. No stress, no physical activity, no stress. I almost laughed. My husband was on television calling me mentally unstable. Half of Chicago thought I was a gold digger. The other half thought I was crazy, and I was supposed to avoid stress. They admitted me for observation. 4 hours later, Preston showed up. I heard him before I saw him, his voice in the hallway, talking to nurses. That is my wife. I have a right to see her. Marcus Webb, who had been standing guard outside my room, stepped into the hallway. I heard him say something about a restraining order, heard Preston's lawyer arrive, 30 minutes of arguing, then silence. A nurse came in. Your husband would like to see you. You have the right to refuse. I refuse, but Preston had achieved what he wanted. Now it would be on a record that I denied him access to me and our baby in the hospital. More ammunition for his narrative. The second catastrophe came that night. Natalie arrived at the hospital during visiting hours. She had called ahead, gotten clearance from Marcus. I was so happy to see her, I cried. I am so sorry, she said, hugging me. I should have known something was wrong months ago. I should have pushed harder to see you. It is not your fault. He is good at hiding things. We talked for an hour. She told me she believed me, that she would testify if needed, that she would support me however she could. Then Detective Webb knocked on the door. His expression was grim. Miss Cross, I need to speak with you. There is an outstanding warrant for your arrest. Failure to appear for a Dwight court date in 2019. I am going to have to take you in. Natalie's face went white. What I paid that fine? I have the receipt somewhere. This must be a mistake. Maybe so, but until we sort it out, I have to arrest you. Marcus looked genuinely sorry, but he put handcuffs on my best friend and led her out of the hospital room. I found out later that Preston had made calls, used his legal connections to have the case reopened, the warrant reissued. It was not a mistake. It was strategy. And it worked. Because 2 days later, when I was released from the hospital, Preston's lawyer presented me with an offer. Drop the restraining order, come home, and your friend's legal troubles disappear. My client has connections who can make this go away, but only if you cooperate. I was sitting in Grayson's townhouse, Diane and Marcus both advising me to refuse. But all I could think about was Natalie sitting in a jail cell because of me. I will do it, I said. Claire, no, Diane started. I have to. I cannot let her suffer for helping me. So I went back, dropped the restraining order, returned to the penthouse with Preston. In the car, his mask finally dropped. Did you really think you could leave me? You have nothing. You are nothing. And if you try that again, I will destroy everyone you love. That night, he locked me in our bedroom, told me I could come out when I learned to be reasonable. I spent 3 days in that room. He brought food and let me use the bathroom, but otherwise I was a prisoner. On the third day, the cramps started again. I screamed for Preston. He let me out and took me back to the hospital. Different ER, different doctor. Same terrifying words threatened miscarriage. Bed rest, no stress. But this time, Natalie was there. She had been released. Charges dropped. She was an ER nurse at this hospital. When Preston stepped out to take a phone call, Natalie grabbed my hand. Say the word, one word, and I get you into protective custody right now. I do not care about the warrant. I do not care what he threatens. I care about you. And here's the thing about rock bottom. Sometimes you hit it and realize you have nothing left to lose. Help me, I whispered. Natalie moved fast. Within 10 minutes, a hospital social worker was in my room. Detective Marcus Webb arrived 20 minutes after that. They separated me and Preston, interviewed us in different rooms. I told them everything again, showed them the locked bedroom, described the 3 days of captivity, the threats, the control. Marcus took photos of bruises I had not noticed. Fingerprints on my arms, a mark on my wrist where Preston had grabbed me getting into the car. For 2 hours, I thought I might actually win, that someone might finally make him stop. Then came the third catastrophe, the one that almost broke me for good. Preston's lawyer arrived, not just any lawyer, a partner from his firm, a woman named Victoria Sterling who was famous for defending impossible cases. She brought documentation, old therapy records from when I saw a counselor after my parents died. She twisted grief into mental instability. She brought up the pregnancy, claimed I had been ambivalent about it, that Preston was excited and I was the one who wanted to terminate. She painted a picture of an emotionally unstable woman making false accusations against a concerned husband. And the worst part, the hospital had to release me. I was not in immediate medical danger. I was legally married to Preston. There was no active restraining order. Without concrete evidence of ongoing abuse, Marcus said, looking defeated. My hands are tied, but I am filing a report and giving you resources. If you need me, call. He handed me his card. Preston's lawyer watched the entire exchange, taking notes. Preston took me home, in the penthouse, with the door locked behind us. He finally exploded. You tried to destroy me. You went to the police. You told lies to anyone who would listen. You tried to ruin everything I have built. They are not lies. His hands shot out and closed around my throat, not choking me, just applying enough pressure to make me freeze. Listen very carefully. Here is what is going to happen. You are going to have that baby. And the moment it is born, I am filing for sole custody. I have the money, the lawyers, the connections. I will prove you are mentally unstable, that you made false allegations against me, that you are unfit to be a mother. He released me and stepped back. Every judge in this city knows my name. Half of them owe me favors. You will lose, Claire, and when you do, I will make sure you never see that child again. Every birthday, every Christmas, every single milestone, you will be erased. He smiled, actually smiled. That baby will grow up believing you abandoned it, and there is nothing, absolutely nothing, you can do to stop me. Then he left for work. I collapsed on the floor, sobbing, completely broken, because he was right. He had more money, more connections, more power. I had nothing. Except I had always been good at finding what people tried to hide. Before Preston, before I gave up my career, I was an investigative journalist. I knew how to research, how to dig, how to find the truth. And I had one more card to play. I found Grayson Reed's card where I had hidden it, picked up my phone, and made a call that would change everything. This is Reed. You said I could call any time. My voice was shaking but determined. I need help, real help, the kind that levels the playing field. Are you in immediate danger? He is at work, but Mr. Reed, he is going to take my baby. He told me exactly how, and I believe him. Where are you with the Icon boys? This penthouse, our home, his home. I am sending a car, same driver. Thomas, 12 minutes. Can you pack? Yes. Yeah, but this time I am not just running. I want to fight. I want to win. Then pack everything you can use as evidence. Documents, recordings, anything. And Claire, this time we are not playing defense. We are going to war. I moved fast, grabbed my important documents, the cash I had hidden, clothes, but I also grabbed something Preston did not know I had. 2 weeks ago, when he had left his laptop open, I had downloaded everything. Emails, files, financial records. I did not know what was in them yet, but I had them on a flash drive hidden in a lipstick case. Thomas arrived exactly 12 minutes later. I walked out of that penthouse for the second time, but this time was different. I was not running scared. I was walking towards something. Grayson met me at the townhouse, but he was not alone. Diane Mercer was there. So was a man I did not recognize, dark-haired with sharp eyes. Claire Denoa, this is James Mitchell. He is a private investigator who specializes in building cases against abusive partners. He is going to help us find everything Preston does not want found. I pulled out the flash drive. I might have a head start. Grayson raised an eyebrow. What is this? 2 weeks ago, Preston left his laptop unlocked. I copied everything. I used to be an investigative journalist. Finding hidden stories was my job. I just never thought I would need to investigate my own husband. James took the drive to a computer. 10 minutes later, his expression had changed from interested to shocked. This is not just personal emails. You have financial records, client files, communications with other attorneys about case strategies. Some of these strategies look questionable at best. He kept scrolling. Wait, this cannot be right. What? Diane moved to look over his shoulder. There are payments here. Large payment is from clients to an offshore account, and corresponding payments from that account to Preston's personal account. He is not just an attorney. He is running a kickback scheme. The room went silent. Grayson spoke first. How much? At least $2 million over 3 years, possibly more. He has been stealing settlement money from his own clients. Diane was already on her phone. I am calling the State Bar Association and the FBI. This is wire fraud. This is federal. Wait. Grayson held up a hand and, before we go to authorities, we need to be strategic. Preston is already trying to paint Claire as unstable. If we come at him directly, he will claim she hacked his computer. fabricated evidence, anything to discredit her. We need to build an airtight case first. So what do? I asked. We investigate everything. We find every piece of dirt he has buried, and we make sure that when we move, it is a killing blow. Not just for you, Claire, but for every victim he has ever hurt. Over the next week, we worked around the clock. James dug into Preston's past, found 3 former associates at his law firm who had complaints against him. 2 had been forced to sign NDAs. 1 was willing to talk off the record. Diane filed divorce papers and a new restraining order, this time with my new evidence. The judge granted a temporary order keeping Preston away. But Preston was not sitting idle. He filed for emergency custody, claimed I had kidnapped myself, that I was mentally unstable and a danger to our unborn child. He had his mother, Vanessa Caldwell, testify that she had seen me acting erratically. He had a psychologist who had never met me write a report suggesting possible postpartum psychosis risk. The custody hearing was brutal. His lawyers presented a polished narrative, successful attorney trying to protect his child from an unstable, vengeful wife. My lawyers countered with financial records showing fraud. The judge looked interested but unconvinced. These are serious allegations, Miss Vaughn, but they are also convenient allegations made during a contentious divorce. I need more than questionable financial transfers. I need proof of direct harm. Your Honor, he threatened to take my child. He locked me in our bedroom for 3 days. He has been psychologically abusing me for 2 years. And yet you stayed. You married him. You lived with him. You got pregnant by him. That suggests the situation was not as dire as you now claim. I felt the words like a knife. This was what people always said. Why did not you leave sooner? The judge issued a temporary ruling. Preston could have supervised visits after the baby was born. Full custody would be determined at a later trial. It was not the victory I needed, and Preston knew it. He was released on bail 2 days later. His mother posted $2 million to free him. He immediately held a press conference, played the victim, said he had been falsely accused by a vindictive wife trying to extort money from him. Public opinion shifted again. Half the internet thought I was a liar, a gold digger, a woman scorned making up stories. I sat in Grayson's townhouse, watching Preston on television, and felt despair creeping in. We are losing, I said. No, Grayson turned off the TV. We are not losing. We are just fighting the wrong battle. He has the public, he has the lawyers, but we have something he does not. What? The truth, and the patience to prove it. He pulled out his phone, made a call. Michael, it is Grayson Reed. I need a favor. That documentary crew you work with, are they available? When he hung up, he looked at me with something like satisfaction. Preston's greatest weapon is his image. He is charming, successful, respected. What if we destroyed that image? What if instead of fighting him in court, we exposed him to the court of public opinion? How, we make him the story. Every fraud case, every victim, every lie, we find them all, and we make sure the world knows exactly who Preston Caldwell really is. And that is exactly what we did. The documentary crew arrived 3 days later. They were from a production company that specialized in investigative journalism, the kind that took down corrupt politicians and exposed corporate fraud. Grayson had worked with them before. The producer, a woman named Angela Hoffman, listened to my story with the kind of focused intensity I remembered from my own reporting days. This is not just a domestic violence case, she said when I finished. This is a story about power, abuse of the legal system, and a man who weaponizes his profession. We need to go bigger than just your marriage. We need to show the pattern. So we did. James Mitchell, the private investigator, started with Preston's law firm. He found 6 former employees who had signed NDAs. 4 were willing to talk off the record. 2 would go on camera with their faces hidden. There was Rachel Foster, a junior associate who Preston had harassed until she quit. She described a pattern of behavior, inappropriate comments, touching her lower back during meetings, blocking her in his office doorway. When she reported him to HR, she was offered a severance package and an NDA. There was David Brennan, a paralegal who witnessed Preston falsifying documents in a personal injury case. He tried to report it and was fired the next day. Also signed an NDA. The stories painted a picture. Preston Caldwell was not just abusive at home. He was corrupt at work, predatory with colleagues, and willing to break any rule that served his interests. But we needed more. We needed to connect the financial crimes to real victims. Diane worked that angle. She started reviewing Preston's client list from the flash drive I had stolen, cross-referenced them with settlement amounts listed in public records, found discrepancies. One case stood out. 3 years ago, Preston represented a woman named Jennifer Mills in a medical malpractice suit. Her child had been injured during delivery due to doctor negligence. The jury awarded $4 million. According to public records, Jennifer received $2.8 million after legal fees. According to Preston's files, the actual verdict was $5.2 million. He had skimmed $1.4 million and hidden it through fraudulent accounting. Jennifer Mills agreed to meet with us. She was 34, raising a child with cerebral palsy, struggling to pay for ongoing medical care. When we showed her the documents, she cried. That money was supposed to pay for my son's therapy, for modifications to our home so he could move around safely. Preston told me the verdict was less than we hoped for, but that we should be grateful. He looked me in the eye and lied. The documentary crew filmed her testimony. She agreed to press charges. We found 4 more cases just like hers. Clients who had been defrauded, who trusted Preston to advocate for them, and who had been robbed instead. The FBI got involved. The State Bar Association opened an investigation. Preston's law firm publicly severed ties with him and cooperated with authorities. But Preston still had his trump card. He was out on bail, and he was coming after me. One night, 2 weeks into our investigation, Thomas the driver called Grayson. We have a problem. Someone has been watching the townhouse. Black sedan, 2 occupants, parked 3 houses down. Professional surveillance. Grayson called Marcus Webb. I need a favor. 2 hours later, Marcus confirmed it. Preston had hired private investigators to track me. They were documenting everywhere I went, everyone I spoke to, building a case that I was not the scared victim I claimed to be, but a calculating woman running a sophisticated scheme. He is trying to prove you are competent and organized enough to orchestrate fraud accusations. Diane explained. If you are together enough to lead an investigation, you are not the traumatized victim you claim to be. It was a smart strategy. Evil, but smart. So what do we do? I asked. Grayson smiled. We give him exactly what he wants. We let him see you living well, working, being strong, and then we use that against him. He explained his plan. It was risky, it was audacious, but it might just work. We arranged for me to meet with a literary agent, publicly, at a coffee shop where we knew Preston's investigators would be watching. I discussed writing a book about domestic violence, about escaping abuse, about rebuilding your life. Preston's team documented everything, exactly as we wanted. Then his lawyers used it against me in court filings, claimed I was exploiting our private life for financial gain, that I was not a victim, but an opportunist. The media picked it up. Attorney's wife plans tell-all book. Is she a survivor or a profiteer? Public opinion turned against me again. The comments were vicious. But here is what Preston did not know: we were counting on that reaction. Because the angrier he got, the sloppier he became. 3 days after the book meeting, Preston violated his restraining order. He showed up at the coffee shop where he knew I went in the mornings, did not approach me, just sat 3 tables away, staring. Marcus Webb happened to be there, documented everything, arrested Preston for violating the order. This time, the judge was not sympathetic. Mr. Caldwell, you are an attorney. You know what a restraining order means. Bail is revoked. Preston spent 2 nights in jail before his mother posted bail again. But the damage was done. He looked less like a concerned husband and more like a stalker. Then Angela's documentary started airing. 3 one-hour episodes. The first covered Preston's fraudulent financial schemes and the clients he had robbed. The second covered his pattern of harassment and abuse at his law firm. The third covered my story, with corroborating testimony from Natalie, Marcus Webb, hospital records, and my own documentation. It aired on a major streaming platform. Within 48 hours, it had been viewed 12 million times. The public opinion tide turned decisively. Hashtags trended. Journalists wrote follow-up pieces. 3 more victims came forward with similar stories about Preston. The State Bar Association officially disbarred him. The FBI expanded their investigation. His law firm settled quietly with the victims he had defrauded. And I got a call from the family court judge. Miss Vaughn, in light of new evidence, I am scheduling an emergency hearing. Mr. Caldwell's parental rights are under review. We were finally winning, but Preston had one more move to make, and it would be his most dangerous yet. The emergency custody hearing was scheduled for a Friday morning. I was 28 weeks pregnant, showing noticeably now, tired but determined. Diane prepped me for 3 hours the night before. He is going to try to provoke you. Stay calm. Answer only what is asked. Do not let him get under your skin. But I was not worried about the courtroom. I was worried about what came after. He is cornered. I told Grayson that night. Cornered animals are the most dangerous. I know. That is why you are not going anywhere alone. Thomas will drive you to court. Marcus will be there. And I will be in the gallery. The morning of the hearing, everything felt wrong. Thomas picked me up at 6 a.m. for a 7 a.m. hearing. Too early. The streets were too empty. Something feels off, I said. Thomas checked his mirrors. We are clear. No one following us. But I could not shake the feeling. We arrived at the courthouse. Marcus was waiting by the entrance. Diane was already inside. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I should not have answered. But I did. Preston's voice. Hello, Claire. You are not supposed to contact me. You are violating the restraining order. I know, but here is the thing. I do not care anymore. You have destroyed my career, my reputation, my life. So I am going to destroy yours. Preston, do not. I am not going to hurt you. I am going to hurt everyone you love. Starting with your friend Natalie. I have her address. I know her schedule. I know she works the night shift at the hospital. I know she walks to her car alone at 3 a.m. My blood ran cold. If you touch her. Or maybe I will start with that old detective who thinks he is protecting you. Marcus Webb. I know where he lives. Nice house. His wife gardens. It would be terrible if something happened to it. A fire, maybe. Gas leak. Accidents happen. Preston, stop. Or maybe I will wait. Wait until our baby is born. Wait until you think you are safe. And then I will find a way. Because, Claire, you need to understand something. You might win in court. You might take my money, my career, everything. But I will never let you have peace. For the rest of your life, you will be looking over your shoulder, wondering when I will come back, wondering who I will hurt next. The police are recording this call, I said, praying it was true. Good. Let them. I am past the point of caring about consequences. If I am going down, I am taking you with me. Not your body, your soul. The line went dead. I looked at Marcus, my hands shaking. He just threatened Natalie and you and said he is going to make my life hell forever. Marcus was already on his radio, calling it in, sending units to check on Natalie. Grayson appeared from inside the courthouse. What happened? I told him. His expression went from concern to coldly furious. He is trying to make you run. If you do not show up to this hearing, it looks bad for your custody case. But if you stay, you are worried about your friend's safety. He is trying to force you to choose. I am not choosing, I said. We are going into that courtroom, and we are ending this. But I was terrified. Because Preston was right about one thing, even if we won today. Would I ever really be free? Would I spend the rest of my life waiting for him to come back, looking over my shoulder, afraid to let my child play in the yard or walk to school? Was survival enough? Or did I need to completely destroy him to ever have peace? We walked into the courtroom. Preston was already there with his lawyers. He looked thinner, older, but his eyes were the same, cold, calculating, filled with hate. When he saw me, he smiled. That same smile that used to make me feel special now made my skin crawl. The judge entered. We are here to determine custody arrangements for the minor child. Mr. Caldwell, you are currently facing federal charges for wire fraud and witness tampering. The state bar has revoked your license, and you have violated a restraining order. Do you have anything to say for yourself? Preston stood, and what he said next shocked everyone. Your Honor, I would like to plead guilty to all charges. I would like to accept full responsibility for my actions. And I would like to request that the court grant my wife sole custody of our child. I am not fit to be a father. The courtroom went silent. His lawyer looked shocked. Diane looked suspicious. I felt my heart racing. The judge frowned. Mr. Caldwell, are you represented by counsel? I am, but I am making this decision against their advice. I have spent the last month fighting my wife, trying to maintain my innocence. But the truth is, she is right about everything. I did abuse her. I did steal from my clients. I did violate the restraining order. And I am done lying. He turned to look at me. Claire, you won. You destroyed me completely. My career is gone. My reputation is destroyed. I am going to prison for a long time. So here is what I am going to give you. I am signing away all parental rights. I will never contact you or our child. You can tell our daughter or son that their father is dead, because the man I was is dead. Tears were running down his face. He looked broken, defeated, human, and I almost believed him. Almost. But then I saw it, the tiniest flicker in his eyes, the same look he had when he was playing to a jury, when he was performing. This was not surrender. This was strategy. Your Honor, I said, standing up. I would like to speak. The judge looked surprised but nodded. Go ahead, Miss Vaughn. Preston Caldwell is one of the best liars I have ever met. He has spent 2 years making me question my own reality, making me believe I was crazy, unstable, worthless. He is doing it right now. This performance, this confession, this is another manipulation. Preston shook his head, still crying. Claire, please. I am trying to make this right. No. You are trying to make yourself look sympathetic. You are trying to get a lighter sentence by playing the remorseful defendant. And you are trying to plant doubt, so that years from now, when our child asks about you, people will say, well, he admitted his mistakes. He tried to make amends. You want to be the tragic villain instead of just the villain. I turned to the judge. I do not want his confession. I want his conviction. I want every single thing he did documented and punished. I want him in prison for as long as the law allows. And I want it on record that he is not giving up parental rights out of love. He is giving them up because he knows he lost. The judge studied both of us for a long moment. Then she made her ruling. Mr. Caldwell, I am not accepting your guilty plea today. You will stand trial for all charges. And based on the evidence I have seen, including the threatening phone call made this morning, I am denying bail. You will remain in custody until trial. Preston's mask finally slipped. The fake tears stopped. His face went hard. You stupid bitch, he hissed at me. I tried to give you an easy out. Now I am going to make sure the trial is as public and painful as possible. Every detail of our marriage will come out. Every moment of your supposed suffering will be questioned. I will drag your name through the mud so thoroughly that even if you win, everyone will think you are a liar. I am counting on it, I said calmly, because the more you talk, the more you reveal who you really are, and the world is watching. The bailiff led him away, still screaming threats. When he was gone, I sat down, my whole body shaking. Diane put her hand on my shoulder. You just did something incredibly brave and incredibly smart. He was trying to control the narrative one last time. You took that power away. But I did not feel powerful. I felt exhausted, scared, wondering if I had just made things worse. Grayson walked me out of the courthouse. There were news cameras everywhere, journalists shouting questions. Miss Vaughn, how does it feel to know your husband is going to prison? Are you afraid of retaliation? Do you regret marrying him? I stopped on the courthouse steps. Every instinct told me to run, to hide, to stay silent. But I had spent 2 years being silent, and silence had almost killed me. So I spoke. My name is Claire Vaughn. 2 years ago, I married a man I thought I loved. Within months, he isolated me from my friends and family. He controlled my money, my phone, my movements. He told me I was worthless, that no one else would want me, that I should be grateful he put up with me. The cameras kept rolling. I kept talking. I got pregnant. He told me to terminate the pregnancy or he would make my life hell. When I tried to leave, He threatened everyone I cared about. He used his connections, his money, and his legal expertise to make me look crazy, to make people doubt my story, to make me doubt my own reality. I looked directly into the cameras. I am not crazy. I am not lying. I am a survivor. And if you are watching this and you see yourself in my story, if you are trapped and scared and think there is no way out, I want you to know something. It is not your fault. You are not alone, and you are stronger than you know. My voice cracked, but I kept going. Preston Caldwell is going to prison, not because I destroyed him, but because he destroyed himself. Every choice he made, every lie he told, every person he hurt, those were his decisions. I just made sure the world could see who he really was. I turned and walked away from the cameras, Thomas and Marcus flanking me, Grayson a steady presence behind me. The trial lasted 6 weeks. Preston's lawyers fought hard, but the evidence was overwhelming. Financial records, testimony from victims, the threatening phone call recorded by court order, my documentation of abuse. The jury deliberated for 4 hours, guilty on all counts, wire fraud, witness tampering, theft, harassment, stalking. The judge sentenced him to 18 years in federal prison. With good behavior, he would be 53 when he got out. As they led him away, Preston looked at me one last time. Not with anger now, with something like confusion. "How did you do it?" he asked, his voice barely audible. "How did someone like you beat someone like me?" I met his eyes. "You made one mistake. You underestimated me. You thought I was the person you broke me down to be, but I was always more than that. You just could not see it." After the sentencing, I had 3 more months until my due date. Bahabo. I used that time to rebuild my life. I moved into my own apartment. Small but mine. My name on the lease. My choices on the walls. Natalie helped me paint the nursery. Grayson bought far too many baby gifts. Marcus and his wife brought meals when I was too tired to cook. I started writing again. Not the tell-all book Preston's lawyers accused me of planning. Instead, I wrote articles about domestic violence, about legal reform, about the ways the system fails victims. I wrote for survivors, and I wrote from experience. My daughter was born on a sunny morning in April, 8 pounds, healthy, perfect. I named her Emma, after Grayson's sister, after the woman whose tragedy had led him to save me. Grayson cried when I told him. "She would have liked you," he said, holding Emma's tiny hand, "and she would have been so proud of what you did. I could not have done it without you." "Yes, you could have. I just gave you resources. You provided the courage." 6 months after Emma was born, I got a letter from Preston. It came from the federal prison where he was serving his sentence. I almost threw it away unopened, but something made me read it. It was not an apology. Preston never apologized. It was a screed about how I had ruined his life, how everything was my fault, how he had been a good husband and I was an ungrateful wife. The same manipulation, the same size, the same refusal to take responsibility. I took the letter to my studio, the small space in my apartment where I painted now. I had taken up art again, finding healing in color and form. I tore Preston's letter into small pieces, mixed them with gesso and glue, attached them to a large canvas. Then I painted over them. I painted Emma's face, laughing. I painted my hands, strong and capable. I painted the Chicago skyline, no longer a prison, but a backdrop to freedom. His words were still there, buried deep in the painting, but they were powerless, just meaningless texture beneath something beautiful. I titled the piece Metamorphosis. It sold at my first gallery show for $15,000. All proceeds went to a domestic violence shelter. A year after Preston's conviction, I was invited to speak at a conference for domestic violence survivors. I almost said no. Public speaking terrified me. But then I thought about all the women who were where I had been, trapped, scared, thinking there was no way out. I said yes, standing on that stage, looking out at 200 women who had survived the unsurvivable. I told my story one more time. People ask me if I am afraid Preston will come back when he gets out of prison. The answer is yes. Some days, that fear is all I feel. But most days, I am too busy living to be afraid, Because here is what I learned: he took 2 years of my life. I am not giving him any more time than that. I looked down at Emma, sitting in the front row with Natalie. She was 15 months old, taking her first steps, saying her first words. She had Preston's chin, but my eyes. And she would never know his cruelty. My daughter will grow up knowing she is loved. She will grow up strong and safe and free. She will never be taught that love looks like control, that devotion looks like fear. She will know that real strength is not about dominating others, but about surviving what tries to dominate you. The audience was silent. Then one woman started clapping, then another, then all of them, standing, applauding. After my speech, dozens of women came up to me. They shared their stories. They asked for advice. They cried and I cried with them. One woman, maybe 25, with bruises barely covered by makeup, grabbed my hand. "How did you find the courage to leave?" I did not find courage. I told her honestly. I found desperation, and then I found help, and then slowly, I found myself again. You do not need to be brave. You just need to take one step, then another, and eventually, you realize you have walked miles. I gave her Diane's card, gave her Grayson's Foundation contact information, told her about resources I wished I had known about sooner. "Will it get better?" she asked. "It will get different," I said. "Leaving is not the end of the pain. It is just the end of one kind of pain and the beginning of healing. Some days will be hard. Some days you will question if you made the right choice. But yes, eventually, it gets better." She hugged me and left. I do not know if she called those numbers. I do not know if she left her abuser. But I hope she did. I hoped she found her way to freedom like I had found mine. That night, back in my apartment with Emma asleep in her crib, I sat at my laptop and wrote the final chapter of the book I had been working on. Not a memoir, a guide, a roadmap for women trying to navigate the impossible terrain of leaving an abuser when the system is designed to fail them. I wrote about documentation, about hidden bank accounts, about safety plans and restraining orders, and choosing lawyers who understand trauma, about the difference between running and escaping, about how leaving is not weakness. It is the bravest thing you will ever do. The last paragraph came easily. "To every woman reading this who thinks she is trapped, you are stronger than you know. You are smarter than he thinks you are. And when you are ready, when you finally decide to fight back, you will not just escape, you will win. Maybe not today, maybe not next week, but eventually, you will wake up in a home that is truly yours, with a life that belongs to you. And you will realize that you survived, and that surviving is its own kind of victory." I hit save, sent the manuscript to my editor. Then I checked on Emma one more time and went to bed. That night, for the first time in 3 years, I slept without nightmares. My name is Claire Vaughn. I am a survivor. I am a mother. I am a writer and an artist and a woman who refused to stay broken. Preston Caldwell tried to destroy me. He failed. And every day I live well is proof that the monster does not always win.